There's no job for someone with such low education. What can a person without any real learning do? My boss said this while laughing, mocking me, a woman who grew up in a single-parent household. I had been working hard all this time for my mom, who raised me single-handedly. He never recognized my efforts and even belittled my mom. Even worse, when my mom passed away, my boss not only spoke cold words but also, "I'm Sarah, a 28-year-old woman working in a small to medium-sized business. Raised in a single-parent household, I joined the company right after high school as a part-timer and am now working as a full-time employee. The company I work for is of considerable size despite being a small to medium-sized enterprise, with a significant number of employees. Initially, I started working part-time but have fought hard, almost as if my life depended on it. Thanks to that effort, I was recognized by my boss, and I managed to become a full-time employee in my third year. After becoming a full-time employee, I continued to work hard, just like when I was part-time, not wanting to disappoint those who believed in me. By the time I was 25, I was given more responsible tasks compared to my peers of the same age, and I was gaining trust from the company. I was also receiving decent pay and bonuses, allowing me to take care of my mom and live a cherished life. Then, one day, my direct boss was due to retire, and a new boss was to be assigned. It was very sad not to be able to work with the boss who had recognized me and nurtured me, and I had some slight anxiety about getting along with the new boss. But I was achieving results at work, and everyone in the company was kind. Above all, the retiring boss told me he would speak to the new boss about me, so I didn't worry too much. Then, the day of the new boss's first day came after my old boss retired. That day, I was called by the new boss, Christopher. I thought he wanted to talk individually with the person who would become his subordinate, so I headed to the designated conference room. But there, I was thrown unbelievable words by Christopher. "Are you Taylor? The high school graduate from a single-parent household who went from part-time to full-time?" Certainly, the Taylor they were referring to in the resume is me. But I was utterly shocked when they brought it up out of the blue. What on earth does this person want to talk about with me? Their attitude wasn't light or conversational, it was intimidating, like they were judging me. My first impression of this boss, who came at me with such a high-handed attitude, was the worst. But I knew we would be working together for a long time, and I didn't want it to affect our future work. "Yes, I am Taylor. I look forward to working with you." I greeted the boss with a smile, trying to brush off their comment. I still didn't know what kind of person this Christopher was. I thought it best to handle the situation calmly, but Christopher continued to barrage me with unkind words. "A single-parent household upbringing, huh? You probably can't work. You didn't even go to college. What can an uneducated person like you do?" I was more than surprised by this statement, I was dumbfounded. It's true that I was raised in a single-parent household and only graduated from high school, but I am the one who has been performing well in this department. I admit I'm not highly educated, but I am producing results in my job. "I may only have a high school diploma, but I believe I'm achieving good results." I explained to Christopher that I might have shortcomings, but I am still delivering results. "I noticed that, but it seems like your previous boss liked you quite a bit, right? He looked crude and lecherous to me. Perhaps you seduced him to get good results?" Christopher started saying something baseless, as if there's no way someone like me with only a high school education could do the job. "That's not true. My previous boss took a special interest in me, but he only guided me so that I could do my job properly." Of course, there was no truth to what Christopher was saying, and I couldn't keep quiet after being insulted about my former boss who had nurtured me. I didn't understand why he could berate me, a complete stranger, so much, but it must have been his inherent personality. The thought of having to work with such a boss in the future weighed heavily on me. Christopher was smirking at me, and it became clear that he didn't like me at all. But if I could prove my worth in front of this boss, there would be no more room for complaints. From what I heard, this boss truly believes in meritocracy. I decided there was no other choice but to use that to my advantage and work even harder. Then, just as I was returning to the office from fieldwork, it happened.
Hey! Where have you been?
No sooner had I returned to the office than Christopher started yelling at me.
I was out on fieldwork.
I had noted on the schedule that I would be out on fieldwork today. Confused as to why I was being yelled at, Christopher deliberately came over to me.
You're no good at your job, so you might as well do the menial tasks. Organize these documents,
he said, handing over a massive stack of papers. It wasn't my job, and I didn't have the time to spare for it. But I couldn't defy the boss's orders, so I reluctantly began to organize the documents. Christopher looked at me with a satisfied expression as I quietly sorted the papers. Perhaps because I obeyed his command, he began piling daily chores on me from that day on. Whenever I tried to do my job, I was accused of being a payroll thief for not doing the assigned work, or yelled at for hours over minor mistakes. He even insulted me, saying, "You can't work because you come from a single-parent household." Until now, I found satisfaction in my work by producing results and being recognized by the company. I was earning enough, providing for Mom, and living without complaints. But now, I feel stress every single day. I have to live, and quitting my job now would worry Mom. I wanted to avoid that at all costs, so I desperately continued to work. One day, Mom came to me with a request. She wanted to find part-time work. Even though I was paying for living expenses and supporting her, she apparently didn't plan on being taken care of forever. She was considering when I might get married and wanted to save some money for herself. I couldn't afford to refuse it either, so I decided to talk to the company. Fortunately, they were hiring an office worker at the time, so it was a perfect fit. It had nothing to do with my department, so I shouldn't have to deal with that horrible boss. After consulting, I was immediately interviewed, and Mom was successfully hired. And so, Mom started working as an office worker at the same company where I work. Mom was happy with the comfortable workplace, saying that going to work every day was enjoyable. But a week after Mom started working, I was called by Christopher.
Your mom got hired as an office worker? That short woman? Is she the one who raised you as an uneducated idiot?
Christopher always looks at me with a nasty expression, making fun of Mom too. I didn't know why he knew about Mom, who had taken an office job without speaking to him, but my stress more than doubled. It was more unbearable to have Mom spoken ill of than myself. Above all, I was worried and restless, wondering if Christopher would say something directly to Mom. I didn't want to make Mom feel bad. However, contrary to my worries, everything seemed to be going smoothly with Mom. As I had feared, Christopher occasionally came to make snide comments, but Mom is a strong woman who raised me all by herself. It seems that such things don't bother her at all.
It's like a child's insult.
Mom laughed. I was relieved by Mom's strength, as she didn't seem to care about Christopher at all. Even after that, Mom didn't pay any attention to Christopher and enjoyed working in her new environment. Then one day, something happened. Mom collapsed and was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. Fortunately, her life was not in danger, but she had to be hospitalized for a while. Because of the sudden incident, I decided to take some time off from work to take care of Mom. However, when I told Christopher about it, he had an outrageous reaction.
Huh? You plan to take time off for something so trivial? You must be taking your job lightly.
Christopher, with an exaggerated sigh, made it clear that he would not allow any time off.
I'll use the paid leave that I haven't used yet. After all, I'm the only one there for Mom.
Permission for this leave had already been obtained from someone higher up than Christopher. They were more than willing to grant me the time off, especially since I had seldom taken any before. But no matter how I explained it, Christopher would not be convinced.
It's not about that. Just leave an old woman whose life is short anyway.
I was thrown a thoughtless comment, and I could feel my blood rushing to my head. Why would he say something like that when I'm telling him Mom has collapsed? I've endured everything he said until now, but I finally reached my breaking point. I can't work under such a person anymore. Once I thought that, I couldn't hold myself back. I knew it might be a hassle for others, but since Christopher came, all I was assigned was menial tasks. Having lost all motivation and given up, I immediately told Christopher that I was quitting. His reaction was one of surprise, as he said,
"You don't have to go that far,"
trying to stop me. He must have been afraid it would become an issue that he caused me to quit. But, of course, my feelings didn't change. I had enough savings, and I could live on that for a while. Ignoring Christopher, I quit my job on the spot and devoted myself to taking care of Mom. Eventually, things settled down with Mom's care, and I decided to re-enter the workforce. I thought about doing the same kind of work as before, but I, having been successful and confident in my abilities, chose otherwise. Having learned a lot about business management from my retired former boss, I took the plunge and decided to start my own company. I wanted to tell Mom after things had settled down, so I struck out on my own. About a year passed, and the company was beginning to stabilize. Suddenly, Mom's condition worsened, and she had to be hospitalized again. I was caught between taking care of Mom and running my business, but I managed to handle both without taking any time for myself. Thanks to that effort, another year went by, and the company was on a solid track, reassuring me of its stability. Although Mom's condition hadn't improved, I wanted to ease her mind, so I was thinking about telling her soon. But then, Mom passed away. It was a truly sudden event, and it didn't feel real. But the sad truth was that Mom had undeniably passed away. Being an only child, I had no other family, so I had to prepare to say goodbye to Mom without time to grieve. Holding back tears, I proceeded with various arrangements. Although I hadn't worked as a clerk for very long, many people who had been friendly with Mom at the company where I worked were willing to attend her funeral. Maybe it was because of Mom's personality, but they wanted to be there. And on the day of the funeral, more people attended than I had expected. It must have been due to Mom's popularity. Despite the pain of losing Mom, I was filled with pride knowing that so many people had come out for her. However, just as the funeral was about to end, the sight of one particular attendee caught my eye.
"Long time no see. So that old woman finally kicked the bucket, huh?"
I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the infuriating figure of Christopher standing there. Though he may have had some interaction with Mom, I had no recollection of inviting this man to the funeral. No matter what, I would never invite someone like him to Mom's funeral. My old boss was smirking at my stunned expression. The very same face he made when he belittled our single-parent household. Those unpleasant memories came flooding back. I could do nothing but glare at Christopher's face. Christopher approached me, handing me a bunch of flowers.
"Here, some flowers." She might have been the sort of woman who couldn't provide her daughter with a proper education, but at least I can do this much.
How could he act like this at someone's funeral? I almost yelled out loud in anger, but I clenched my emotions. I didn't want to ruin Mom's funeral or inconvenience the other mourners. I accepted the flowers in silence. But, unbelievably, the flowers looked like something he had picked up off the street. Had this man come all this way just to pull off such a nasty trick? As Christopher saw my face, he grinned even more maliciously. That moment, my suppressed emotions came out. I couldn't stay silent after having my precious mom ridiculed so much.
This is how you feel about me, then? I understand. In that case, I'll have to call off our business deal with your company.
Christopher stared blankly at me as I said this.
Huh? Deal? What are you talking about?
My foolish former boss looked clueless, not understanding what I meant. So I explained to him, politely, the meaning behind the words I had just uttered.
So this is a matter of business with my company. I've been asked by my colleagues and seniors in the sales department to sign quite a lot of contracts, but I want to terminate all of those contracts. I want to rethink our relationship with a company that has someone like you,
I declared. At first, my former boss didn't believe me, but the next day he sent a written notice to Christopher's company. Christopher, upon seeing it, looked quite pale. He never expected that I had started a business and succeeded, so he came to apologize immediately with the president.
I'm sorry,
Christopher said, his attitude hardly apologetic. My anger did not subside.
You're sorry? You think that's enough? Insulting my mom while she was alive, only giving me menial tasks, and what about the funeral? You think everything until now can be made right with such a shallow apology?
As I continued to speak, Christopher looked at a loss for words. Beside him, the president, who had come along, apologized deeply.
I'm so sorry for not noticing,
he said, tears welling in his eyes. I had been greatly helped by the president, so I felt terrible. In the end, out of respect for the president, I decided to continue the business relationship. Hearing me and the president talk, Christopher wore a relieved expression.
Oh, what a relief! Let the bygones be bygones and move forward together,
he said, offering a ridiculous smile and extending his hand for a handshake. He must have thought we had reconciled. But it wasn't such an easy situation.
You're fired, Christopher,
the president announced right in front of me.
What, fired? Why? I got forgiveness, and we're continuing the deal,
Christopher protested to the president, looking disbelieving. The president had decided to fire Christopher, knowing I would not be satisfied continuing the business relationship this way.
I only decided to continue the deal out of respect for the president. I never intended to forgive you. I will never forgive you no matter what you say,
I said, as if delivering the final blow. Christopher fell completely silent.
It's the result of your own words and actions.
President spoke as if tossing his words aside and then left, dragging a completely dejected Christopher with him. The next day, it seems that my former boss really was fired from the company. Afterward, I received a resentful call from Christopher. He lamented losing his position and the fact that finding a new job at his age would be difficult.
You've ruined my life. Take responsibility for what's happened,
he yelled over the phone. I made a proposal to the furious Christopher.
How about I hire you at my company? I can't pay you much, but it seems like you're out of a job because of me.
When I said that, taking responsibility as he demanded, he suddenly exploded with emotion and hung up. Being employed by someone he had ridiculed must have been a complete humiliation. I knew he probably wouldn't accept this offer. But a month later, apparently unable to find another job, Christopher asked me to hire him, abandoning all his pride. Honestly, I was surprised, but I decided to hire Christopher. Then, I made him experience the same humiliation I had endured as an employee.
Hey! Why do I have to do these menial tasks? Anyone could do this.
Now that our positions were reversed, Christopher began to complain. But I kept him on menial tasks, giving him no responsible work.
At your age, to be fired for incompetence? I can't imagine you'd be able to handle real work. Besides, the boss's orders are absolute, so you can't defy them, please.
I said coldly. Christopher looked downcast. He looked entirely different from the arrogant person he was at his previous workplace, and his appearance was extremely shameful. Soon after, Christopher quit the company. He probably couldn't endure the humiliating treatment from me, but it was all something he had done to me. Doing to others what you hate being done to yourself is just nonsensical. Not understanding such a simple thing eventually leads to a difficult situation where everything is lost. By the way, my company is still growing steadily and doing reasonably well. Persistent effort will surely bring results, and without it, only modest success will follow. Whether you end up like Christopher or not is truly up to you, I believe.
Come see the baby with him. You must be frustrated being single.
With a triumphant smile, my best friend Christina said. It was the same expression she had 2 years ago. Christina and I, who were colleagues at the company, were thought to be best friends by those around us. In fact, I thought so too. But to Christina, I was just someone to be used. Christina stole Daniel, my fiancé, and left the company boasting about it. Left behind, I quietly thought to myself, I won't forgive Christina or Daniel, who abandoned me. The moment for revenge seems to have finally arrived. I narrowed my eyes and stared at Christina. My name is Kimberly, 27 years old. Having graduated from a decent university, I was able to get a job at a fairly large company. There, I fell in love with Daniel and got engaged after 1.5 years of dating. Daniel was older than me and was good at his job. He was popular among the women in the office, and I was filled with pride back then. But what was strongest wasn't a sense of superiority, but the happiness of being able to marry Daniel. My best friend Christina also congratulated me. At that time,
Congratulations on your engagement, Kimberly.
Thank you. I was so happy because I was crazy about Daniel. Daniel also smiled at Christina.
Having friends to celebrate with, Kimberly, you have a talent for being likable.
Not at all. I shook my head, not entirely displeased. That day, the 3 of us, Daniel, Christina, and I, who had finished work, were at my apartment. Christina and I were sitting across from each other at the table, so I could see her expression well. Christina seemed genuinely happy for me.
How did Kimberly and Daniel end up together? I was the one who approached him. I even aggressively asked him out on dates. We went to various places for lunch and dinner together.
It's fun to be together, and Kimberly is good at cooking too. Daniel was youthful in appearance and had a toned body. That alone made him a fiancé to boast about.
Speaking of which, Kimberly, you suddenly started going to cooking classes.
Oh no, don't say that. I was flustered. Christina was innocent, so she probably didn't mean any harm. But for me, it felt like my secret had been exposed. As I panicked, Daniel laughed.
You went that far for me? I'm happy. Because I love Daniel.
I blushed and looked down. Overwhelmed by the awkwardness, I stood up from my chair and fled to the kitchen. I'll get some drinks.
Yeah, please do.
Daniel waved his hand at me. I retreated into the kitchen and sighed. I was surprised. Christina has moments like that from time to time. She would tell others inconvenient things about someone with a smile. It was my fault for letting my guard down around her. With that thought, I opened the fridge. At that moment, laughter echoed. It was Daniel and Christina's.
Really? Is that true? Yes, it is. Kimberly would bring her failed cooking attempts in a lunchbox to work every day. I tasted it once, and it was awful. But it was delicious when Daniel ate it, right?
Of course. The presentation was beautiful too.
You worked hard, Kimberly.
Christina laughed as if she was impressed. I hurried back to them with a beer in hand.
Christina, let's drop that topic, please.
We're engaged after all. I thought this conversation was already had. Christina said, her smile fading from her face, as she pouted like a child.
Look, Daniel, Kimberly is being tough on me.
Christina. Just kidding. Saying that, Christina smiled again. I felt uneasy about Christina's attitude, as she never apologized until the end. Daniel's demeanor gradually became more sullen.
I have a night shift today, so we can't meet,
he said, and stopped coming to my apartment. At first, I thought it was inevitable because of work. But one day, while talking to Daniel's colleague, I learned a shocking truth. Daniel seems busy these days, doesn't he?
Daniel? No, our department is slow right now, so there's no overtime. What?
I was stunned. When I confronted Daniel on his way home, he looked awkwardly down.
What's the meaning of lying?
Sorry.
Kimberly, wait.
Christina had been listening in from some point, and was standing there. She stood not by me, but by Daniel, and took his arm.
I was the one holding him back. I started going to cooking classes recently, inspired by Kimberly, and I had Daniel taste test and give me advice. Wait a minute.
I couldn't comprehend what Christina was saying. Fueled by anger, I glared at Christina.
Why are you copying me? And Daniel is my fiancé. It's strange to meet secretly, isn't it? There's nothing strange about it.
Christina suddenly twisted her mouth. It was a creepy smile. I didn't know Christina could make such a face.
It's not strange. If Kimberly had a chance, I think I have the right to try under the same conditions.
Christina snuggled up to Daniel and smiled.
He ended up liking me more than you. What?
I looked at Daniel in disbelief. What was Christina talking about? It was a bad joke.
Daniel, you're tired. You don't have to stick around Christina anymore.
Sorry, Kimberly. Daniel whispered an apology. Before I could say anything more, he hugged Christina.
Wait.
I've always liked Christina. But you were always there, honestly getting in the way. But since you was so devoted, I thought about marrying you instead.
What is that supposed to mean? Sorry, Kimberly. But that's how it is.
Christina said with a triumphant look while still in Daniel's embrace. Thanks for your hard work until now. From now on, I, who truly love Daniel, will support him. Wait. That's not. I felt darkness closing in around me. Despair crept up from my feet. They quickly left. The next day, Daniel broke off our engagement and announced his new engagement with Christina at work. 2 years have passed since then. The whispers about Daniel disappeared with his promotion. I've continued to work, bearing both sympathy and ridicule from my colleagues, until today. Until I met that person.
Huh? Isn't that Kimberly?
Christina. I heard a voice I didn't want to hear. Looking across the street, she was walking towards me. Why did I have to run into her on a weekend afternoon? She was draped in branded bags and accessories. Given Daniel's current position, such luxury wasn't impossible.
Kimberly, are you still living in that apartment? What do you want to know for?
Just wondering. I thought I might visit again. Or maybe you could come to my place. Hey, that would be better, wouldn't it? She was presumptuous. I frowned and was about to leave, when Christina called out from behind. Come see the baby with him. You must be frustrated being single. Christina. I sighed and stopped. When I turned around, Christina was smiling. The triumphant look on his face was the same as it was 2 years ago. Fine. When should I come? The sooner, the better. How about tonight? You must be free, right? I'm not free, but I'll come anyway. Good. Christina smiled, her face contorting as if in a grimace. That night, I drove according to the map I received. Daniel and Christina's house came into view. It was a grand and tasteless house, just like Christina. I'm here, Christina. I've been waiting, Kimberly. How does it feel, the air of a married couple? It must be hard for single Kimberly, but bear with it. Don't worry about me, I said, cutting off Christina's chatter. Then, let me introduce my family. Christina's face froze in astonishment. Wait, isn't Kimberly single? I might not be wearing a ring, but I do wish she'd wear one, though. Matthew, standing beside me, chimed in. Matthew is my husband. Though he's been divorced, he values our marriage all the more for it. Christina, what are you doing? Oh, Daniel. Long time no see. I casually waved and greeted him. Daniel was taken aback. First by my appearance, and then, a moment later, by Matthew's presence. The president? What? Hearing Daniel's voice, Christina also became flustered. Ignoring them both, Matthew laughed. Nice to meet you. I'm Matthew, Kimberly's husband. And this is our daughter, Brittany. Pleased to meet you. Brittany greeted them. She's turning 9 this year. Despite her age, she's composed and mature. What do you think of my family, Christina? What do you mean, what? Why? Christina screamed, her face turning red. Why is Kimberly married to the president of the company? Hearing Christina's outcry, I remembered the day. I met Matthew in the company's break room. When I was feeling down and tired of the bad-mouthing alone, Matthew approached me. What's wrong? It's nothing. I looked up at Matthew with caution. Being tall, I had to look up to see his face. But that didn't matter to me at that time. I think I had reached a state where I expected nothing from anyone else. So, I didn't mind telling Matthew about Christina. After all, it was already well known within the company. They're terrible. Matthew frowned as he said that. It's my fault for not being appealing. That's what everyone says. No, it's not your fault. The fault lies with those two. It was the first time anyone had said that to me. So, I was happy and called Matthew my savior. Savior? Yes. You've made me feel so much better. So, Matthew, you're my savior. I said that and was about to leave, when Matthew, with a solemn look, spoke to me. If I'm your savior, then let me be the one to rescue you. That's how I started dating Matthew, and at the same time, the bad-mouthing about me faded away. I didn't understand why at the time. I only found out Matthew was the president after he proposed to me. No wonder the bad-mouthing stopped. After all, I was dating the president. Why didn't you tell me? It was hard to bring up. But my desire to be with Kimberly is genuine. Seeing Matthew smile sheepishly, I couldn't bring myself to say anything more. By that time, I had also gotten to know Brittany. Brittany had started calling me Mom. And so, I became Matthew's wife. Remembering that, I couldn't help but give a wry smile. Who
would have thought Matthew was the president? But now, I'm happy.
Yes, I'm sure you are. Christina's voice sounded like she was holding back anger. Well, you are the president's wife.
It's not about that. Matthew is kind and thoughtful, and Brittany is honest and adorable. I'm happy because I got to become a family with them. So, you came here to show off. That's in poor taste, Kimberly.
I was appalled by Daniel's misplaced remark.
I didn't come here on my own. Christina was the one who insisted.
You know she won't take no for an answer.
I just went along with it. Is that true, Christina? Well,
Christina's face looked like she was about to cry. To Christina and Daniel, who were feeling down, Matthew said cheerfully,
promoting Daniel was a way of thanking him for being kind to Kimberly in the past. Yes. But that ends today. From now on, I'll be the one make her happy. Daniel, you're going back to being a regular employee. What?
Daniel let out a scream. Naturally. He must have bought a house based on his current income. But losing his position now would mean a significant drop in income.
You can't be serious,
Christina shouted.
Just because you're the president doesn't make this right. We have a baby to think about. You two both can work, that should be enough to get by.
I stated the obvious. Though, you might have to say goodbye to those branded goods.
Kimberly, you're the worst.
Christina was wailing. Daniel started to placate her as if he had resigned himself to his fate. I turned to Brittany with a smile.
Brittany, would you go back to the car? This isn't something I want you to see.
Okay. Brittany nodded and headed back to the car.
Shall we head back too?
Yes, let's. I started walking away with Matthew. Christina's crying could still be heard. The news about Daniel being demoted to a regular employee became a topic of gossip within the company.
It's not like Daniel was exceptionally talented. I want to place someone more competent in Daniel's position.
Matthew said this and then looked at me.
What do you think? Kimberly, would you like to give it a try? Me? No way.
Really?
But I believe you're diligent, and I trust you'll meet my expectations. Thank you, Matthew.
I wanted to meet Matthew's expectations, despite my apprehensions. So I accepted the position. My world changed overnight. Colleagues who used to badmouth me were now anxious to see how I'd react. Please take care of this.
All this work, by myself?
Daniel let out a cry at my instructions. But he got to work even before I could say anything more. Daniel was desperate to get promoted again. Though Matthew said there was little hope for that.
Why has it come to this?
Focus on your work instead of complaining. Christina had also returned to work. Christina seemed to be financially cornered. The colleagues' response to her was cold. Everyone was aware of the friction between Daniel and me, and it was clear that I was the victor in this battle. There was no longer anyone in the company who dared to oppose me. One day, during a break, Christina approached me. Usually eating lunch alone, she spoke awkwardly. Kimberly, please. Forgive us. We can't take it anymore.
Daniel's salary has decreased, and we've had to give up our house and everything. There's nothing to forgive.
I sighed in exasperation. Christina looked plain, almost like a different person. Though she wore makeup, it couldn't hide her pallor. Her hair was unkempt, showing a lack of care.
This was Matthew's decision. I was promoted for my work, and Daniel returned to his original position. That's all there is to it. But you have the title of being the president's wife.
Christina raised her voice. I shrugged in response. With Matthew's income, I don't need to work. But I continue because I find fulfillment in my job.
Don't act so high and mighty. Calm down, Christina.
I looked around. Christina followed my gaze. Other employees were watching us from a distance. She seemed to shrink, realizing that causing a scene would only worsen her situation. On another day, Daniel also approached me. He too pleaded for his position to be reinstated. Don't you think it's terrible to be given menial tasks by people who were once your subordinates? They seem to enjoy piling work on me.
That's tough.
I offered a sympathetic response, though it felt detached. I once had feelings for Daniel. We were engaged once. It was undeniable that some residual feelings stirred within me. But that was all there was to it. Now, I am Matthew's wife. I love him, and I think of Brittany as my own daughter. There was no love left for Daniel. Keep up the good work. You even have a child with Christina. Christina always cuts corners with meals. I feel sorry for the kid. I regret it. I should have married Kimberly instead.
If only you had what?
I looked at Daniel with a chilly gaze. I had thought he was a kind man. But in reality, he was just a coward, always looking out for himself. Caught up in convenient fantasies, utterly hopeless. I'm glad I didn't marry Daniel. Knowing his true nature now gives me peace of mind.
What?
I left a bewildered Daniel behind and returned to my work. I had my own struggles too. The workload was incomparable to before, and the pressure of not making mistakes was immense. Yet, I also felt a sense of fulfillment. I felt like I had finally found my place in the company. Christina and Daniel came to me almost in turns. Both of them became increasingly haggard, and it was distressing to watch.
Please! What happened 2 years ago was a mistake. Forgive us. Speak to the president. You know, convince him that it's a waste to keep me as a regular employee. I should aim for a higher position.
That's for Matthew to decide. I had stopped engaging with them. They both talked about nothing but money. And recently, it seemed their marriage was also on the rocks. I began to notice them arguing from time to time. Then, Daniel came out with something astonishing.
I'm willing to leave Christina. No, I will leave her. So, let's get back together.
Don't be ridiculous. My voice contained a hint of irritation.
I love Matthew and Brittany. It's over between us, Daniel. That can't be true. Don't you still think of me, somewhere deep in your heart?
He was again saying things that suited him best. I had no words to return. It seemed pointless to speak. Then Christina appeared. She must have been eavesdropping on our conversation, and confronted Daniel with a raised voice.
What are you saying, Daniel? Christina doesn't even take care of the child properly and does nothing but complain every day. I didn't know she was like that.
The two of them started arguing. I quietly left the scene. Soon after, it seemed they got divorced. I say seemed because they're no longer at this company, so I only know through rumors.
There's no hope for promotion here anymore. I'm sick of my colleagues.
With those bitter words, Daniel left the company. Christina also left around the same time. Later, she appeared several times in front of the company, begging me to lend her money, but I didn't entertain her requests.
Christina, you need to manage on your own. Don't be like that. As the president's wife, you must have more money than you need. Don't talk like that.
I frowned. Matthew's assets exist as a result of his hard work. It's unfair to talk as if the money just appeared out of nowhere. But it seemed my words didn't reach Christina.
You're heartless. You're no best friend of mine.
That was the last line I heard from Christina the last time we met. I couldn't help but scoff. Best friends. The feeling was mutual.
The moment you took Daniel from me, we ceased to be best friends. Maybe we were never truly friends to begin with.
I muttered to myself, alone. I continued to work at the company. However, after finding out I was pregnant, Matthew and I decided that I would leave the company. Financially, we had no worries. I could also ensure more time with Brittany.
Let's spend lots of time talking together, Brittany.
Yeah. I'm also excited about the baby. Brittany smiled as she gently touched my growing belly. Matthew watched us with a fond smile. Brittany has a little brother. His name is Andrew. Andrew. She adored and took great care of Andrew. Despite her maturity, Brittany had felt lonely with both parents working. She became more affectionate towards me, and I grew even fonder of her.
Mom, Andrew smiled. Do you think he knows I'm his big sister?
He might. I stroked Brittany's head, who was beaming with pride. Matthew, busy with work, often came home late. Concerned about the limited time to talk with the kids.
How about we go out this weekend?
Where to?
Anywhere is fine.
Whether it's a barbecue or an amusement park.
If our time to talk with Brittany is limited, we should make our time together as rich as possible,
I said. Matthew's eyes lit up as he took my hand.
Kimberly, you're a genius.
Not really. But more importantly, shall we go check on the kids sleeping? With my suggestion, Matthew nodded. Hand in hand, we headed to the children's room. Brittany was sleeping. She was wrapped in her bed, breathing peacefully in her sleep. She's grown so much, he murmured, touching Brittany's cheek gently. She smiled as if tickled, but showed no signs of waking. Surely, she would have sweet dreams tonight. We then moved to our bedroom. In the crib beside us, Andrew was sleeping. His hair was starting to grow in, and his features resembled Matthew's more than mine. Yet, Matthew said,
Andrew looks like you,
he said with a smile.
But he has your mouth, Matthew, don't you think?
Really? I think the area around his eyes is just like Kimberly's. We exchanged these gentle words and laughed together. Life had its hardships and unpleasant moments, but I was undeniably happy now.